My 13-year-old niece giggled, her voice cutting through the noise of the crowded room. Mom says, "If you disappeared tomorrow, no one would notice." The words hung in the air like a challenge, sharp and cruel. Around me, 30 guests erupted in laughter, their voices blending into a chorus of mockery. I didn't laugh, I didn't move, I just nodded, 2 taps on my phone, and with that, every payment, credit line, bill, and subscription I had ever covered for them vanished. Gone. That night I disappeared too. I left behind nothing but a black backpack, its contents a mystery that would haunt them. The scene replays in my mind. The birthday party, the laughter, the humiliation. My niece, her delicate fingers tearing away the plastic from the $850 phone I had bought her, her words dripping with venom. The living room pulsed with chatter, a cacophony of voices too loud, too careless. A birthday cake sat untouched on the kitchen table, its candles unlit, but the flames of resentment burned in my chest. My sister Lindsay didn't even glance up from her phone, her smirk a silent judgment. Mom pretended not to hear, stirring something in the kitchen. But I caught the slight lift of her shoulders, a silent approval. Dad, though, didn't bother to hide it. He chuckled, raised his beer, and muttered, "Well, she's not wrong." The laughter that followed felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I stood there, a fool, the one who had always paid, fixed, and bent over backward for them, the one who was never enough. "Thanks for the phone, Uncle," my niece chirped, her eyes glued to the screen. I watched her, my face hot, my heart pounding. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in. But I didn't say a word. I nodded, smiled, and pretended, just like I always did. Lindsay finally looked up, her eyes meeting mine. In that moment, I saw it. A flicker of amusement, of triumph. She had been waiting for this, for me to stand there, humiliated, speechless. "All right, everyone, let's cut the cake," Mom announced, her voice too bright, too cheerful. The tension broke, but the bitterness lingered on my tongue. I retreated to the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching as they gathered around the table. Candles were lit, wishes made, and I stood there, my hands curling into fists. Something cold bloomed inside me. My phone, a weapon in my pocket. 2 taps, that's all it took. Every bill, every subscription, every credit line I had ever provided for them, gone. My fingers moved instinctively, a decision made before I fully realized it. Gone. The voices around me blurred, distant and meaningless. The room, once filled with familiar faces, now felt alien. They laughed, cheered, celebrated, but I wasn't there anymore. I was a ghost, invisible, insignificant. I slipped out without a word, without a goodbye. No one noticed. Of course they didn't. My niece had been right about that much. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked to my apartment, packed a few essentials, and retrieved an old black backpack from my closet. It had been forgotten, neglected, but tonight, it had a purpose. I filled it, not with my belongings, but with something else, something they would never expect. I returned to the house, slipping in unnoticed. The party was still in full swing, the noise deafening. I left the backpack by the stairs, a silent sentinel. And then I left, disappearing into the night. Really gone. By the time they found the backpack, I would be nothing but a shadow. The silence didn't last long. The explosion came the next morning, a pounding on my apartment door, loud and relentless. No phone calls, no polite knocks, just fists hammering on the wood. "Open up!" Dad's voice, loud and furious. I stayed silent, watching the door shake. "I know you're in there. You think you're smart? You think you're better than us?" His voice cracked, rage mixed with something else. Fear. I didn't respond. I wasn't playing their game anymore. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his heavy footsteps retreat, the slam of his car door. But it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 20 minutes later, my phone died. A text from Mom. "How could you do this to your own family?" I didn't reply. An hour later, Lindsay called. I watched her name flash on the screen and let it ring. Then another call. And another. 6 times in total. Finally, a message. You think you're so clever? You think we can't live without you? Fine. See how long you last without a family. I read it and smiled. Was that supposed to be a threat or a promise? But the real storm came that evening. I was stepping out of the shower when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a key in the lock. My heart stopped. No one else had a key to my place. No one except me. The door burst open, and there he was, Dad, red-faced, sweat dripping from his forehead. Mom stood behind him, her eyes wide, frantic. You think you can lock me out? Dad bellowed. The storm had arrived, and I was ready. Get out, I said, my voice calm but cold, slicing through the tension like a blade. Get out, get out. This is what you've become. Mom's voice cracked, shrill and hysterical, as she spat her words like venom. We raised you. You used me. I leaned against the kitchen counter, towel in hand, drying my hair, unmoved. You raised me, I corrected, my tone sharp. There's a difference. Dad stepped closer, his fist clenched, his eyes wild. You're an ungrateful troublemaker. Try it, he growled. The words slipped out before I could stop them, steady and unyielding. Try what? I challenged, my calm composure only fueling his rage. His hand trembled but didn't move. We both knew the truth. He wasn't a fighter. He never had been. He was a bully, hiding behind his words, shouting to mask his fear. What did you do? Mom's voice broke, her desperation palpable. The cards don't work. Lindsay can't pay her bills. The mortgage. It's all over. I nodded slowly, my calm unnerving them further. That's right. Everything I paid for, everything I managed, it's over. Dad let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Oh, you think you're so powerful? You think we need you? Seems like you do? I shrugged, refusing to give him the reaction he craved. Since you broke into my apartment to beg, I began. Beg? He snarled, his face twisting in anger. You think we're begging? Enough, I snapped, cutting through his tirade like a whip. Enough! I'm done. Mom stepped forward, hands outstretched, her voice trembling. Please, this is your family. We're all we have. All you have, I corrected, my words like ice. I'm done being your safety net, your crutch, your doormat. Dad's face twisted in rage. You're a pest, he hissed. I raised a finger, my voice low and dangerous. Get out, now. You can't do this, Mom whispered, tears streaming down her face. This is cruel, cruel. I laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. Cruel is telling your son he's worthless while you spend his money. Cruel is using me like a tool and laughing behind my back. Dad stepped forward again, but this time I didn't flinch. He stopped, his shoulders slumping in defeat. You'll regret this, he muttered. You'll crawl back. I won't, I said, my voice as hard as steel. They left, slamming the door behind them. But as their footsteps faded, I knew this wasn't over. The next day, they changed tactics. Lindsay appeared at my office, her face pale, her eyes puffy from crying. I watched through the glass as she pleaded with my boss, her voice rising, her hands shaking. My boss glanced at me, confused and uncomfortable. I stayed at my desk, refusing to acknowledge her. Security escorted her out, but I knew she'd be back. That night, another knock, my landlord, shifting awkwardly. Your family is downstairs making a scene, he said. Tell them to leave, or I'll call the police. No, I said, my voice firm. Not anymore. I watched from the window as they shouted and waved their arms, their desperation on full display, until security dragged them away. But I knew them too well. Their persistence was relentless. And somewhere in the house I had left behind, A black backpack waited, a silent promise of how far I was willing to go. The silence didn't last. I knew it wouldn't. Days passed, and I ignored their calls, their texts, their desperate voicemails. I let the world fade away, basking in the quiet, but I wasn't naive. I knew they wouldn't give up. First came Lindsay's tantrums, bitter messages, venomous accusations. Then Mom's tearful voicemails, her voice breaking as she begged me to save the family. And then came Dad. At first, his messages were filled with rage, threats, insults, the usual noise. But then, his tone shifted. Calm, calculated, an invitation. Son, let's settle this like men. No drama, just you and me. There's a game this weekend. Our team plays. Come, let's talk it out. A setup. I felt it in my bones, but I agreed. I wanted to end this, once and for all. So I went. The stadium roared like a living beast. Cheers, screams, feet pounding on metal bleachers. Chaos. A perfect place for secrets to drown. Dad waited in section 12, a row of empty seats around him despite the packed stadium. He spotted me instantly, waving with one hand, clutching a black backpack with the other. My backpack. I walked down the steps, each stride deliberate, my eyes locked on him. He wore a twisted smile, like a predator cornering its prey. Surprised I called you? He shouted over the noise, patting the seat next to him. Finally decided to talk like men, huh? Talk, I said, taking the seat, my gaze fixed on the backpack. Is that what this is? I asked, my voice low, dangerous. Oh, I think it's more than that. The air crackled with tension. This wasn't about peace. This was about control. But I wasn't the same fool who once nodded and smiled in that living room. Not anymore. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper, dripping with venom. You thought you were smart, huh? Running away, cutting us off, but you left something behind. His fingers tapped rhythmically against the backpack, a slow, deliberate beat that sent chills down my spine. We found this. And guess what, genius? We know. Know what? I asked, my voice steady despite the cold wind biting at my face. Your secrets are your lies, he hissed, his voice sharpening like a blade. You think you're clean? That you're better than us? I didn't flinch. Open it then. Let's see what you know. His eyes flickered with a mix of fear and rage, but he held his ground. Don't play games. I don't have to open it, I replied, leaning back against the cold metal seat, my calmness unnerving him further. I already know what's in there. You've been stealing, manipulating, pretending to be the honorable son while hiding your dirty secrets. But the only secret in there is the truth. The crowd roared as the home team scored, their cheers a stark contrast to the thick tension between us. Around us, the world seemed to fade, leaving only silence, the weight of his glare, and the backpack trembling in his grip. You're bluffing, he muttered, but his voice wavered. You're trying to make me doubt, but it's over. We're telling everyone what you are, how you abandoned your family. Go ahead, I said, gesturing toward the field. Tell them. Tell them how I paid Lindsay's rent for 2 years. Tell them how I covered your debts when you gambled away half your pension. Tell them how I bought your granddaughter that phone, the same granddaughter who called me worthless. His face darkened, a storm brewing in his eyes. Shut up. No, let's clarify, Dad, I continued, my tone unwavering. You've got a bag full of proof of everything I did for you, and everything you took. And you still think you have leverage? His knuckles whitened around the backpack. Don't you talk to me like that. Like what? I leaned forward, my voice calm, but my eyes blazing. Like the worthless piece of furniture you always treated me as? Like the walking wallet you called me? Shut up, he shouted, rising to his feet, drawing stares from the crowd. Sit down, I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the air between us. For a moment, he faltered. Fear flashed in his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability he couldn't hide. He hated me, but he feared losing control even more. "Or what?" he sneered, forcing a laugh that rang hollow. "What are you going to do? Attack your own father? You think anyone here will take your side?" I glanced at the crowd, a sea of strangers absorbed in their own lives. "You're just an angry old man with a bag full of debts," I said. "And they don't know me, but they don't have to." His face twisted in fury. "You are an egoist." "Egoist?" I smiled, a cold, humorless twist of my lips. "I was your lifeline, and now you're drowning without me." He lunged, his hand swinging toward my face, thick and trembling with rage. But I didn't flinch. I didn't move. His fist stopped inches from my face, suspended in the air as if an invisible force held it back. His hand shook, his breath ragged. "I should have left you on the streets," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You were always a parasite." "Funny," I whispered back, leaning in so close I could smell the stale beer on his breath. "That's exactly what I thought about you." Something broke in him then. His hand dropped, his shoulders slumped, and the fight drained out of him like air from a punctured balloon. The crowd's cheers crescendoed, drowning out the sound of his crumbling pride. I grabbed the backpack from his limp grasp and pulled it toward me. "Do you want to know what's in here?" I asked, my voice loud enough for nearby onlookers to hear. "Everything I've done for you, every cent, every sacrifice." People stared, some whispering, others pulling out their phones. "You want the truth?" I unzipped the backpack and pulled out a thick stack of papers. There it is. His face drained of color as he stared at the evidence in my hands. "Proof of how I carried you," I said, holding the papers high. "Proof of how I paid your bills, saved your house from foreclosure, twice. And you want to talk about betrayal?" He sank deeper into his seat, his voice barely a whisper. "Stop." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You wanted a scene. You got one." I let the papers fall from my hands, watching as they fluttered down the steps like dead leaves in the wind. Then I turned and walked away, up the steps, past the staring faces, past the whispers. "You can't just leave," he shouted, his voice cracking. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For the first time, his voice meant nothing. They didn't stop trying. Not at first. The day after the stadium, the day my father's pride crumbled into the cold metal seats, my phone rang like an alarm. Call after call. Messages flooded in. Accusations, pleas, threats. A relentless cycle of desperation, wrapped in familiar voices. But I had already walked away, and this time, I wasn't looking back. I shut it all out. Dad was the first to crack. His calls spiraled from rage to desperate pleas within hours. "We can work this out," he lied. "I'll forget everything. Let's be a family." But I didn't answer. Then came Mom, her messages laced with guilt. "You're breaking our hearts. We didn't mean it. Family is all we have." I didn't read most of them. Lindsay was next, her words dripping venom. "You're a coward. A selfish, worthless coward. You've ruined everything." Then a softer plea. "Please, just talk to me." I didn't mean it. I was scared. "Don't do this." But I did. Silence. That was my answer. My revenge. At first, they didn't understand. They thought I was bluffing, playing some twisted game. But as days turned into weeks, the bills they'd ignored piled up. Their so-called friends stopped choosing sides, and reality hit them like a wrecking ball. They couldn't reach me. The landlord called, voice trembling, explaining they hadn't paid rent. "Not my problem," I told him. Mom sent a photo of the family huddled in darkness, a lone candle flickering on the table. "We have nothing left." I deleted it without hesitation. One evening, as I walked home from the grocery store, I saw him, Dad, pacing outside my building like a madman. His face was ghostly pale, his hands trembling, the fire in his eyes replaced by something darker. Fear. When he saw me, his face lit up with twisted hope. He lunged forward. "Listen, you can't do this. You're my son. I didn't slow down. I was your wallet, I said. He blocked my path, his voice cracking. We raised you. We gave you everything. You used me. I met his gaze. And now you have nothing. I tried to walk around him, but his hand shot out, gripping my arm. You don't get to do this. His voice was a snarl, the old anger resurfacing. You think you're better than us? You think you can just walk away? I know I can. I yanked my arm free and kept walking. He swung at me, a feeble, clumsy punch. I didn't flinch. His fist glanced off my shoulder, more of a pathetic shove than a strike. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall, gasping for air. Pathetic. The word slipped out like a sigh, his face contorted, rage boiling over. You'll come crawling back. You always do. You're nothing without us. I laughed, loud and sharp, the sound echoing down the empty street. I was nothing with you, I said, turning my back. I walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I buried my phone in the bottom drawer of my desk and left it there. The messages and missed calls piled up, but they couldn't touch me. A week later, a handwritten letter arrived. Shaky script spilled across the page. Mom, please. Your father is sick. Lindsay is losing her mind. We're falling apart. You're the only one who can fix this. Please come home. I crumpled it up without reading further. They were falling apart. Good. For the first time, I wasn't. I didn't move. I didn't change my number. I didn't hide. I stayed right where I was, but I stopped being part of their world. And their world crumbled without me. Lindsay's friends stopped answering her calls. Mom's distant relatives, the ones who once sent polite Christmas cards, ignored her completely. Dad lost his temper one too many times and got fired. But I didn't care. I didn't watch. I lived. I cooked for myself, slept soundly, and took long walks without the constant buzz of demands for my time, my money, my life. They became voices in the wind, ghosts of a life I'd left behind. Months passed, and silence became my ally. I woke when I wanted, ate without guilt, and spent weekends rediscovering the city I'd once ignored. Freedom filled every quiet moment. Sometimes I'd brace myself for the familiar buzz of desperate texts or the suffocating guilt they brought. But it never came. I had done the impossible. I'd buried them, not in the ground, but in my past. I walked down Main Street one crisp autumn morning, passing the cafe where I'd bought overpriced cakes for Lindsay's birthday, the boutique where I'd spent a fortune on gifts, the restaurant where I'd paid for endless family dinners. Ghosts. Just ghosts. On the corner, a street musician strummed a slow, aching melody. His voice was raw, fingers dancing across the strings. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I stopped, letting the music wash over me. It wasn't about love or heartbreak. It was about letting go. The world buzzed around me, alive and indifferent. I stood still, breathing it in. When the song ended, I dropped a $20 bill into his guitar case. The musician nodded, and I smiled. Not because I had to, not because someone expected it, but because I wanted to. And that was the difference. I didn't need them. I never did. I walked on, each step lighter, each breath freer. As the sun sank below the rooftops, painting the sky in amber and crimson, I felt it, a quiet certainty. I was free.